Hello dear viewers, welcome to another Geonodes Daily series tutorial where we see how fast can we make something cool. And today we are going to make this what you see in the on the screen, and I mean the geometry nodes part, because for the materials and stuff like that you have to check the link in the top right corner or the one in the description. That will take you to that part of the video. Today, like I said, we are going to focus on recreating this awesome animation, and we will follow these steps that you see here in the card. Before starting with the first part, I want to give a big thank you for all of you that are supporting this channel. Thank you for watching the videos, for subscribing, for commenting on the videos, liking the videos, and a big thank you for all of you that are deciding to purchase the project files from Gumroad. All of these things are helping this channel grow, so thank you very much for your support. Now, starting with the first point, the idea of this video. A while back, I got a comment from a viewer on my videos asking how you can make something explode in geometry nodes. So I promised him I'm going to look into that. So this is how this video came out. And the idea, it's kind of well, one second. Yeah, my tablet was off. Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna use the mouse. So you have a mesh in geometry nodes. It's true we are going to work with text, but you can play with this also with the mesh. And the idea is to find a way to break the mesh into pieces that look like they are random, something like that. And there is an easy way to do that with the Voronoi texture. The tricky part was to make all these pieces, to control these pieces individually, because even though they are seen as pieces, they are made of many vertices, and controlling them can be tricky, especially if you want to stay within geometry nodes and don't want to add other modifiers and do other kind of trickery for this. But thanks to a new node, relatively new, this is possible to create. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to break the text. We'll control the pieces to fly in all over the place, like you saw in the demo. So that's the idea. It's relatively simple. So let's do the first part. Let's take care of breaking the mesh. So this being a text, of course we will need the string to curve text. Let me get rid of the input. We don't want it. I'm gonna put this into the frame, and let's add a text. Let's say rocks, like I did in the demo. Awesome. So now we want to fill this text, and for that we will use a curve, fill curve. And because we want to have this 3D, and we at this point we don't have a solidify or an extrude node, let's take care of that by adding this unfortunately still needed solidify modifier. And let's give it a thickness, let's say 0.1. And as you can see, nothing is happening because this modifier doesn't see the geometry. And we also need to turn this into a real geometry, because using this realize instances node, because we want to break it into pieces and control the pieces, and therefore we need this node. As soon as we add it, we have this result. I would like the text to grow from the origin, so I'm going to push this offset here like this, and that's going to be it for this solidify node. So moving on to the breaking part, we first of all need more geometry. So I'm gonna add a mesh simple subdivide because I don't want to change the shape of this text, and 2 subdivisions should be just fine. And now we are going to separate the geometry. Before continuing, quick word, I play with this quite a bit, and you can try to break it into pieces, meaning using this output and this output, and stop at this. But I found out that layering the effect gives better results. So we will break the pieces first like this, and then we will gonna take this piece, for example, and we are going to break it again. So we'll have 2 levels. So this being kind of a repetitive task, we will do this branch, then duplicate the nodes for the second branch. Excellent. Now we have this separated, so we have to bring in a mask to separate these points. And if we talk about mask, we need a boolean, and the compare node will be great for this. So greater than, it's excellent. Let's do something with this input, and here is where the Voronoi texture comes in. I'm gonna plug this one here, and let's use the distance input, and we are not going to need 3D. Actually 3D is not gonna work the way we want, so let's switch to 2D, and I want this distance to edge option, and now we need a value here. So let's put 0.2 to make it interesting. As you can see, we have all these lines, the edges, and we don't want that. So let's switch to the face mode, and now we get this result, as you can see here. And of course you can play with these values. So let's say I'm going to increase this to 8.6, something like that, and we have this geometry broken into pieces, and it's kind of looking like a very jagged rock, and that's what we are going for. And the rest of the geometry is obviously here on this inverted value. So if we are to plug a join geometry and put it all the way here, we could plug this one here and get our geometry back. And that's basically the way we are going to deal with this effect. So let me save. It's always a good idea to save. So let's start with the first branch. I'm gonna do again a subdivide and separate, Shift D, and let's plug this one here, cut this connection, plug this one here, and let's take these nodes here, and then again I'm gonna duplicate this setup from here and plug this result here. And of course I want smaller pieces, so let's increase the Voronoi breakage, and now as you can see we have a different result. We have smaller pieces, and the rest of them are here. So like I said, this is a repetitive process. We will do pretty much the same thing with from now on with the other pieces. So let's do the random placing first, and after that we are going to duplicate the setup. Okay, we want to move piece in the random fashion. That means we kind of need this set position node. Let's plug it here, and we will need, of course, a random value, and we are going to plug this random value into the offset for now, and switch this on to vector. And let's see, I want quite a bit of randomness here, so let's say -2 to +2. But I want no pieces to go down, so I want them to start at 0 and just going up. That's why this value is 0. Let me plug this one here, and we get this jumbled mess. And that was the problem in the past, because we basically push every vertex of this geometry, and we have quite a few, as you can see here, more than 13,000. We push it in a random value, but we don't want that. We want to push in the random direction every piece, every island. And that's the cool part, because now we have this cool node called the mesh island in the mesh section. And if we push this to the ID, we get this result, as you can see here, where the pieces are pushed into the direction by using only the islands, as you can see here. We of course want to control this effect, because this is basically what we need to do next to control this effect. So having this plugged in directly, it's not gonna do much good. So let's control this effect, and for that we will use this color mix RGB node that is giving us a factor that is a field, so we can play with this value to do all the cool stuff that we want. And in order to make this one work, we want to add an offset of, let's plug this one basically here. I'm going to put this one here, and for the first offset I kind of want things to stay in place, so let's do a 0. That means we add nothing to the offset, so pieces are staying here, and as we play with this factor we get the maximum randomness that we created. Excellent. Let me save. It's always a good idea to save often. And one more thing that I need to do to be set up, if we push things like this, you will notice something funky happening with the islands. And in order to avoid that, we kind of want to take the position and a vector math, and let's add this position to this result, cutting this one and plug it here. And now things are okay. We don't get any deformation of the changing of the size of this thing that it's happening here. Okay, let's arrange things a little bit. At this point, if you want to have things neatly and clean, it's a good idea to do it, because we are going to duplicate this quite a few times. But before we do that, let me frame the entire thing, this part, meaning that we did here, and connect it like this. And before starting to duplicating stuff around, I want to create the controller for this. So let's do this. Let's create the controller. Like I said, we have a great opportunity with this field factor. We can make things look more interesting by controlling the pieces individually, because right now they are all moving together, something like this. We want some of them to start earlier, some of them to start later, and in order to achieve this effect, I want to expose this value. So I'm going to take this layout group input, and I'm going to do a map range, plug this input here, and now I have a factor from 0 to 1 here, and this is going to be used to control this value from here using a random value. So what I want to do is to add this random value. Remember, we have to have a factor between 0 and 1 here. As a quick note, you can't overshoot this value. So if you put like 2, nothing will happen. As you can see, 5 or whatever. This will always stay between 0 and 1. And in this case, that works to our advantage. Let me make a little bit of room here. Deselect this node, deselect this node, GX, push this one here. This works to our advantage because we actually want to keep in this range. So we want to add this value here and this value here and plug this one here. And now we have a 0 to 1 factor that is controlling the effect, and the output we want to be -1 to 1. Why is that? Because if we add, for example, we get a value from 0 to 1 here. And if we start at -1 and we add a random value, the maximum will be 1. So we start at 0. And as we increase this input, the value will go from 0 to 1. So we will add 1 and we start with nothing. And then when we get the other range of the scale, we will end up having the value of 1. Basically, we will keep everything in the 0 to 1 range with this setup. This is going to be our controller. And if we pull this one out and we look here, we have this value and we get this crazy result again, because we get again a value for each and every point in our geometry. But we already know how to fix that. Control C, Control V. Let's take this one, Mesh Island, and plug it into the ID. And we get what we want. Now everything moves, moves in the random fashion, as you can see here. Let's quickly make sure that this output is doing what we want. Let's put the minimum to 0, maximum to 1, and I'm going to put the default to 0. Excellent. So now we have this controller that is basically doing what we want. Excellent. Now that we did this, it's time to duplicate this setup a bunch of times. So let me take this setup and do Control-Shift-D, one time, Control-Shift-D, two times, Control-Shift-D, a final time. So let me push this one up. And now it's time to activate the pieces here. So we'll activate this piece, and now we have this separation here, the level 2 separation from here. So let me put this one here. We want to plug this value here also. Excellent. And for the geometry, the second one, we will of course want to plug the same value from here. Excellent. And the output will come here. And then this output will come here. And this output will also come here. Let's delete this one. So we took care of these two as outputs. Now we have this one, this output from here, that we want to pass to this setup where we broke things again, these ones. So let me frame these ones and also this subdivide. Excellent. Plug it here. And now we can take this entire thing and do Shift D. And we will plug this geometry here. And now we have two branches here that we can use. This will be the first branch, we pass it here, and this will be the second branch, and we pass it here. Okay, now we have the entire setup back to what it's supposed to be, and we have this controller. Let me give it a color like green, that it's controlling everything. And now if we play with this value, hey, we get the text broken up into pieces, as you can see. But things are not looking as we want yet, because everything gets displaced in the exact same position. And there is an easy fix for bits. We just change the seed for each alternative. So let's do like 2 here and 3 here. So they get different random value, each of them. So now we get the entire things working as we wanted. Save again. Like I said, it's always a good idea to save. Of course, nothing stops you from playing with all of these values to get different results, and break this into a third level if you want, using the same idea. But what I want to do now, it's address this problem. If we go to face corner, we see we have absolutely nothing here. And this being animated inside of geometry nodes, when we will want to do some shading, if we want to add a procedural texture or an image texture, that will be kind of tricky, because if you use generated coordinates, the texture will start to move on your pieces, and that doesn't look good. So we kind of have to fix this. And for that, let's create our own custom UV map using a capture attribute. We want to capture a vector, and that vector is going to be the position. So now once we did this, we can expose this value. Even though it's not mandatory, you could put this to the face corner domain, and let's call this UV. And as you can see, nothing changes here because we have to give it a name here. So let's say UV map, enter. And as soon as we fill in the attribute name, it appears here. And now we can use this value in the shader editor to have a custom UV map. There is a caveat to this method. The solidify modifier is not going to take this into account. So our UV map is going to be only on this side. And this side is just going to be stretched from this border. So you will have, as you saw in the demo, you can only map something like ridges to this one. And the fix is not quite so easy. But for this effect, given that it's realistic for pieces to break and keep something like we see here, I thought it's actually okay to leave it like this. So what I want to do now is to add some rotation to this entire cloud of pieces. And if I want to add a rotation and a random one at that, I'm going to use, you can use transform, but transform is just going to rotate the entire thing altogether, and this is not what I want. I want to rotate pieces individually, so set position, and I'm going to use a vector rotate, and because I want to control this effect, I'm going to add from the get-go a mix RGB, plug this one into the position, and now everything gets pushed to the origin, to the 0 point, but that's okay. We are going to fix this. Let's plug this vector here. We want to start with the original position, so let's plug this one here. And as you can see, if we go here, we get everything back, and now we play with this value to change the rotation. So Let me put this one here, like this. As you can see, we have a problem. We need a vector here as a reference. So let's take the same position, plug it here, and everything goes normal now. And now we can use this value to again move everything together. But this being a diamond shaped socket, it can accept a field. So that means that we can do cool stuff with that. I'm going to use a random value and plug it here into this angle. And then again, we get this kind of a jumbled mess. We already know how to fix that. We go to mesh island, and plug it into the ID. And now every single island of mesh is going to get its own random value. And I want to do a rotation from minus 360 degrees. That's going to be 6.2 in radians. We are working in radians. And because I want to animate this, the second value is going to be passed through a scene time node. I don't want the seconds, I want the frame actually. So now if we play the animation, we get this crazy motion. It's easy to fix this. Let's do a math. Switch this one to divide or multiply. I'm going to switch it to multiply and give it like 0.05 speed. And now everything moves slower. And as you can see, some of the pieces are moving faster, some of them are moving slower. And that's all thanks to this wonderful random value node. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. And in order to control this effect, I want to do this thing that we did again here. We have this setup, and we can plug the output. Actually, we can plug the output directly in here. So let's do that. And now this output is going to control the rotation. When this is at 0, nothing moves. And if we have something like a small value, we get this value. So basically, this is what we set up to accomplish, this entire thing that you see here. And one more thing that I want to show you, how you can map two different materials to this. Let's put a material, set material. I'm going to choose a blue material, switch this one to material preview. And then I'm going to switch this material to, let's say, orange. And the way you can combine to have a material on the top and one material on the ridge to get different things going on, you can go to this solidify modifier that you added here. And if we go to materials, let's say for the rim, I'm going to do a -1. And doing that, it's going to set the rim to this material and the top to this material. So you can get the result in the demo, having a face with a lot of details and ridges on the edges. One more word before showing the cleanup setup. As you can see here, let me put this to orange and this one to blue. As you can see here, things are not shaded smooth. If you try to shade it smooth, you will get this problem. You will start to see the breakage of the surface. So you kind of have to build a selection here for that. And at the moment, one of the best ways to do that would be to use edge angle. But I'm not going to do that here. I just want to show you how you can do that if you want to. A final save, and it's time to move to this final point and see the cleanup node tree, so you can get a nice screen grab for that to have as a reference when you work on this effect. So welcome back. This is the finished node tree and the finished result, the one that you see here. All these details are added in the shader, and it's looking quite nice, as you can see. One more thing that I want to tell you, I added this ground material here, and I animated to don't stay in the way of the effect when we are at a different frame. Let's say when we are like this is pushed all the way down, so it's not gonna show up in the camera. But when we get to this stage or something less, the plane goes up. Anyway, going to the setup, we started with preparing the text for the instancing, for the breaking, and for solidify modifier. And then after that, we broke the mesh first by subdividing and separating using Voronoi texture. And then we branched out, and for each branch we did again a breaking and a subdivision, and again Voronoi for this. And we have this piece of node tree that it's the same for all of them, minus the seed. And what we did, we created a random value. We made sure that that random value has one random value for per mesh, and we added the position to this to make sure that the pieces don't get smaller or bigger, they don't get distorted. We use the mix node to control the effect and set position to implement the effect. This is the controller. We expose the value, and then what else we did, we remapped the range. We had a 0 to 1 value in the modifier stack, but for this effect we needed -1 to 1 to add again a random value to the effect. And this was used for all 4 pieces of the result, just changing the seed, as you can see here. And after that, we build a UV map, so we can use in the material. We added a random rotation with this setup here, and then at the end the materials. So this is it for this project. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you find this information useful to implement in your project. And of course, for all of you that want to make like an exploding effect, that's the way to go in geometry nodes right now. You can change the text mesh to whatever you want to get that effect. So happy blending and have a nice day, and hope to see you in the next tutorial.